chapters. This is just on 10. Okay, so congratulations on finishing the novel. So I'm going to do notes again, like I just said, on chapters 18 and 19. And then you guys actually have a little bit of a writing assignment that should take you a good probably 20 to 30 minutes of class, just because it requires you kind of digging through the novel. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into what you read last night, which, yeah, Jessica, I think you're spot on about that. It's pretty sad. I feel like it's hopeful in some ways, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, especially what happens to Nita, right, is pretty sad. Okay, so chapter 18 is entitled The Shabbat. So I'm just going to
I gotta make new notes.
do some notes on this. Okay.
On this job.
Okay.
Did you have
All right, guys. So why is this chapter entitled The Shabbat? What's the deal here? What has happened at the beginning of the chapter when it comes to the war?
Everything was like being bombed. The shuds, is that how you say it?
Yes. Yeah. So the Iraqis had actually obtained more powerful weapons, right? And they actually began bombing. And so she talks about her friend. It's on page 137. They've been hearing different booms and different things happening. And we're going to have a quote from this page too. Everyone decided to flee Tehran. If y'all notice that, everyone was fleeing because of all the different bombings going on. But her family chose to stay. And y'all, I hope y'all understand that that is how important education is to Margie's parents, okay? Because the only reason why they stay is because in Iran, this is the only place she could receive a French education. And what's significant about the French education is that they were just trying to make sure that she had the most westernized education that she could, because their hopes is that at the end of all of this, right, they still believe that education will be important at some point in Margie's future. Yes, Jeb?
If she's pursuing a French education, couldn't she go to France and get an education?
Yeah, so we'll kind of, I mean, I don't know exactly. She goes to Austria. I think they still want her to be with someone that they know. And perhaps they don't know anyone in France that she can go and stay with because it's with a family friend. And again, they promise that they're going to go and live with her, but we kind of know, and so does Margie know, that they're never going to come, right?
Did she never meet her friends again?
No, she sees them again. So, and again, maybe you should read. I have the whole book here, Corey, if you're really interested and want to.
Like the Persepolis 2?
Yeah, I have it's all 3 parts. It's like we went through her adolescence. She achieved her coming of age, and then we'll go through it goes through her teen years and then also into her adulthood.
Oh,
I have the whole one. If you want to, sure. It's good. Okay. Well, last year I had them buy the whole book because I thought they would be interested in wanting to finish it, and they weren't. So I just had y'all buy the cheaper version. Okay. All right, good. So I want to have this quote again. It's Margie on the vacant streets of Tehran, and it says, if there was to be a future in my parents' eyes, that future was linked to my French education, and Tehran was the only place I could get it. Okay, so we're going to quote here the thing about education, because again, I would argue that education is one of the main themes of this novel. Okay, and again, that's on page 137. Okay, also on this page, we meet Nita, who, again, is their Jewish neighbor, right? One examples was our neighbors, the Baba Levis. They were among the few Jewish families that had stayed after the revolution. Mr. Baba Levy said their ancestors had come 3,000 years ago, and Iran was their home. Their daughter Nita was a quiet girl who didn't play much, but we would talk about romance from time to time. And even the way they picture their futures is westernized, right? With the men that they want to be with. Because listen to what Nita says. One day, a blonde prince with blue eyes will come and take me to his castle. And Margie says, oh, yeah, me too. Okay. So her and Nita are friends, right? They pass the time. Margie's out buying jeans. It also talks a lot about the financial state of the country, right? When the Shah was in power, it was pretty good, right? I think it was, what is their currency called? Tumans? Tumans. Yeah, it was 7 tumans to the dollar, and now it was like 110 to the dollar. So, yeah, really not doing too great there. She hears a boom, right, saying, and it's supposedly from her side of town. So she runs, she gets in a taxi, and she finds out that her mother's okay and her family's okay, but it's the Baba Levy house that has been bombed. And so it really is quite awful here. It's on page 142. When we walked past the Baba Levy's house, which was completely destroyed, I could feel that she was discreetly pulling me away. She's talking about her mother. Something told me that the Baba Levys had been at home. Something caught my attention. So remember, they were hopeful that the Baba Levys weren't at home because they were hoping they were out, right? It was a Saturday. Most families are kind of out, right? Doing whatever they need to do on Saturdays. But what was different about this family? They're Jewish, and in Jewish culture, religion, what happens on Saturdays? Yeah, exactly. So you stay in, and they weren't exactly, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Like when you really stick to the regimen.
Rigorous.
Yeah, there's like devout. They weren't as devout as maybe it just by chance they were home that day, right? And so she knows that they were home because she says, I saw a turquoise bracelet. It was Nita's. Her aunt had given it to her for her 14th birthday. The bracelet was still attached to I don't know what. So could you imagine rolling up to your neighbor's house and it's totally annihilated, and seeing your friend's basically piece of a body part, right, with a bracelet on it. And so, y'all, this is important because this is the final kind of, not the final, but this is one of the groundbreaking moments where Margie finishes romanticizing about war, right? And we find out too in the Dowry, she even stops romanticizing about martyrs because she talks about who she feels is the true martyrs, which we're going to get to in a second. So again, this entire time she's had a romanticization of the war and of martyrs and all of those things, which is overall the way many Iranians felt and still feel, right, as a part of their culture. And so here she's recognizing it at 14, just from seeing her friend's body part. So again, I saw a turquoise bracelet. This turquoise bracelet is symbolic of Nita's death and her last romanticization of war, right? Because now it's hit personally. She's lost Anoush, right? But she didn't have to see that. She didn't have to witness that. This is on her front doorstep, her seeing her friend. Okay. So I'm going to write that quote here. Again, it's on page 142. I saw a turquoise bracelet. Okay. And again, I'm just going to write here, the death of Nita makes the war personal and inescapable. The romanticism is completely gone. understand too, what does she beg her mom money to do? I mean, when she hears that bomb, she's out buying jeans, right? I mean, she's just your typical teenager trying to look cool, right? Have new jeans fit in, but in the midst of this war.
Can I say it's completely gone?
Yeah. Okay. All right. And this last chapter here is called The Dowry. Why is it called The Dowry? What does her family finally admit to her? Or not admit, but kind of tell her about? Okay. Yeah. So what happens? I mean, Marcy's kind of a bad A. She's super rebellious. Not that it's a bad A to slap your principal, but she really stands up for what's right. And when she feels like her teachers are lying to her or just speaking through the mouthpiece of the regime, right? And so at first she ends up hitting her principal because she's trying to wear jeans, she's trying to wear bracelets, right? She's trying to express her individualism. And the principal, to be fair, puts hands on her, right? And is like, let me see your wrists. Let me see if you're wearing this jewelry. And so it just shows them struggling and her being expelled after she hit her principal. So then they're able to get her into one other school, but then again, she has problems there because basically the teacher says, since the Islamic Republic was founded, we no longer have political prisoners. And she knows that that's absolutely not true because her uncle was actually, right, imprisoned and executed. And so she has all the stats. So if y'all understand that not only is she privileged financially, but she's privileged in a way of her parents are very educated on what's going on. And she's been overhearing this for years, right? And so, yeah, she's constantly speaking out in school. And so basically they tell her, you need to be careful because this rebellious streak can get you killed, right? This isn't the time to speak out. This is the time to kind of keep your head down, especially as a young girl. And basically they talk about, do y'all remember Nilifer, I think was her name? Was it Nilifer? Do you remember how her dad was going to get the passport from that guy, but then the passport guy was hiding a young communist girl, and then she ends up being executed, and then he fled. Remember that whole chapter? Well, basically she finds out what happens to Nilifer, right? And it's this idea of, that's what happened with Nilifer, or maybe Nilifar, I'm not sure how to say her name. After she was executed, to make sure her awful fate was understood, they sent 500 tumens to her parents, which is the equivalent of $5, okay? So traditionally, when a girl gets married, the husband is supposed to pay her a dowry. So I hope you understand that her father is using the word marriage, but basically he's saying that these girls are raped, right? And the idea that they weren't supposed to have sex until they were married. And so these girls would be raped. And in order to mock the parents, what these officers or whoever it was that found her, they would send a dowry back home, right? Just so the parents knew that she was raped before she died. So again, the dowry being symbolic of this raping that was happening to women before they were executed. So do y'all understand how that's them trying, I mean, it's this terrible cleverness, right? And trying to make sure that the family knows what has happened, because if it was a traditional interaction, right, they would have paid a dowry before they had sex with her. So she learns the truth about Nilifer, and she actually calls Nilifer the true martyr, right? She says here, all night long, I thought of that phrase. To die a martyr is to inject blood into the veins of society. Nilifer was a real martyr, and her blood certainly did not feed our society's veins. So again, she's truly understanding what it means to die a martyr, right? And all of these consequences of war that she's experienced personally, okay? So I'm just gonna write here, right, the dowry. Okay, and the dowry in this way, meaning symbolic of, I'm just going to say here, rape, right? That the young is captured. And also too, I hope you understand, right? I don't need to explain that that's pretty insulting, that your daughter has been brutally raped and murdered and that you get a $5 bill in the mail, right? Saying that's all she was worth. It truly is disgusting.
They're giving $5 because she was raped.
Yeah, they're basically trying to say, right? Because if she was able to live on, she would have gone on to get married and have sex, right? And so before that happened to her whoever was going to marry her would have paid a dowry, and that would have been symbolic of, I'm paying you this money and now we're going to get married and consecrate this marriage, right?
Oh.
And so they're basically trying to say like, oh, don't worry, she was raped before we killed her. Here's a dowry. I married her before I killed her, AKA I had sex with her and it wasn't consensual, right? So again, this book gets pretty heavy in these last couple of chapters, but it's because Margie's getting older, right? And she has more of an understanding. All of these things had been going on, but she wasn't told the truth of it or really understood it. And so, yeah, the rest of the book does get heavier because she's older and she has more realizations about what's truly going on, okay? Right, good. So then her parents decide to send her to Austria, right, to receive a French education. And what she takes with her, what does she end up taking? She goes out to the garden and grabs what? She grabs a handful of dirt from her garden. She takes it in a jar with her to Austria. So dirt being symbolic of her connection to Tehran, and this actual tangible thing that she can feel from her homeland. And clearly we see the sprinkles of that and the sprinkles of her heritage all throughout this novel, right? So again, dirt is symbolic of her connection to Tehran. Okay, she leaves for Austria. And then this is what the quote her father says, one of the last things he says to her. It's actually really beautiful about her grandmother. I know it was kind of weird, like her putting flowers in her bra at night. But it was this connection. It was her last night sleeping with her grandmother, right? And she'll always remember the smell. Is it violets that she puts in her bra at night? Something like that. And so she remembers that smell and she knows she'll never see her grandmother again. Her grandmother says, oh, I'll come and visit you. But she knows that'll probably never happen. And I think we all have that. Those memories associated with smell, right? Even when you walk to your grandparents' house or whatever it is, right? And so that idea of the crushed flowers, right? And her burrowing her head into her grandmother's chest to say goodbye, that memory that she has there. Okay, and this is what her father says to her at the airport. Don't forget who you are and where you come from. Again, I would argue that's a huge theme of this book as well. So that's our last quote here. Don't forget who you are or where you come from. And that's on page 152. All right. And then she flies off to Austria, but before she looks back and she sees her mother, uncontrollably sobbing, has probably fainted, and her dad is having to carry her out. Again, are they going to come and live with her in just a couple of months? Probably not, right? So yeah, it's a pretty somber ending here, but it's also hopeful for Margie because she's getting out, right? And things aren't looking good in Iran. And so she's able to go and get her education. And at least we know the happy ending is, if this is her life story, look at what she was able to compose through her education, right? And through what her parents had given her. She's able to give this back to them, right? And give this back to her country, just her story, being able to tell it. And so all of their efforts for her education, I would argue, aren't in vain, right? Because look at what she accomplished through that education. So again, guys, that's kind of the end here. And there's lots of different facets of the story and, reasons why you might find it controversial. But I hope that you understand that we don't have to agree with her religion. We don't have to agree with her upbringing, but I hope that you can see ways that she is just like any other American teenager, and any other teenager across the world. And that's what this unit's about, work and translation, right? Is books that were written in other languages, us connecting to them. Okay. So yeah, that's the end of it. Again, I have the whole books. I have some other copies in my classroom, and if you're interested in finishing her story. But what I want y'all to do is a bit of a reflection for the rest of the class period. You have about 30 minutes here. And what I want you to do is think about a couple of questions that I'm asking you here, okay? So if you look at Google Class, I have a guided journal entry, but you're actually going to be sharing it with the class. So I want you to comment it. I don't suggest typing in the comment box just because it deletes it and you never get it back. So maybe type it on a Microsoft Word doc or whatever it is that you want to do. So in a comment below, please explain if Margie has experienced her coming of age. How so? Choose one quotation from the book to support your reasoning. So guys, I've given you a lot of quotations. Hopefully you've been diligently taking notes. This will help you with that. But also you can sift through your own annotations and look at the book here. But you can pick from chapters 1 through 19. Has she experienced a coming of age? And again, remember the way we've defined this idea of coming of age, okay?
Are we doing this now?
Mm-hmm. And then I want you to, what do you think Satrapi's main message is for her novel? Again, you must have one quotation from the text to support your reasoning. So using that word that I don't particularly like, but theme, what is the theme of the novel? Okay, what is it that Satrapi is trying to get across? So you have 2 quotations. You'll have 2 paragraphs for this, 2 separate questions, okay? You're going to type it in today's. You're going to really take some time to flip through the pages of this book, appreciate wrapping it up, and really kind of dig into the overall message here.
Is this due Monday?
It's due by the end of class, okay? So over the weekend, you're going to want to review your notes, look back over the chapters. You will have your quiz on chapters 9 through 19. You don't have a unit test for this, so these 2 quizzes basically make up a test. So you're going to want to be sure that you are prepared for that as well. All right, Peyton, Jalea, do y'all have any questions?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. But could you send me, please, the recordings that we've done, like of the notes this week, please?
Yes, I will upload them in these last 30 minutes and just send you all the YouTube links.
Okay, thank you.
I'll post the the pictures I've taken under each day's Google Class.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, guys, y'all have a great weekend. I will see you Monday.
You too, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.